Jordan Peterson. Is he really a malevolent cult leader disguised as a well-intended therapist, psychologist, and university professor? We're going to explore that in this video very shortly. Hey kids, Straight Talking Fedora Chick coming at ya, and welcome to the channel. For those of you who are new here, we're a social commentary channel along with story times emphasizing mental health topics, but not exclusively. Basically talk of social issues of the day. If you want to join me on this roller coaster ride, please subscribe and hit that little ringy dingy icon below so you can be notified every time I upload. Noticing a few videos as of late from some of the mental health community here on YouTube saying they are learning their tricks to cope or to walk through life from Jordan Peterson. Now, I've always believed that there are different solutions for different people, particularly with something as complex as mental illness. Even two people with the exact same diagnoses with the same comorbid conditions require different treatments, solutions. Everybody has a different path to walk. However, I do draw the line at the likes of Jordan Peterson. The man is dangerous, and I will get to that. I mean, who the hell keeps issuing this clown a license to practice? But right now, I want to point out some of the more serious dangers about this man as a therapist/professor, especially a psychologist who should know better. I know it's not just because of his politically right-wing views. As a matter of fact, there are plenty of psychologists, psychotherapists who would be right-leaning politically and can still keep their politics outside of their job as they are supposed to do, ethically and morally. But Jordan Peterson can't seem to do that. For openers, I must say that he is not practicing clinical psychology these days, but even if that is true, he could well end up providing therapy again. It appeared, however, that once upon a time, up until approximately spring of 2018, the man was offering at the $200 per month tier of his Patreon account a 45-minute Skype session 101. You know, that is almost double the average going rate of psychologists, psychotherapists in private practice, at least here in Montreal. Anyway, it is not advertised as therapy per se. This is his way of circumventing ethics, I am pretty sure of that. But it appears in this way a patron can vent about their issues and he responds in kind. It has been evident in those Skype sessions, Peter injects his own political views rather than helping the patient. Well, okay, fans, patrons, whatever you want to call them. One particular Skype session with one particular Trevor Alexander Nestor, an unemployed young white man who appeared to be couch surfing with no apparent fixed address. It should be noted that the Skype conversation was witnessed by a New York Times journalist, Nellie Bowles, who wrote a profile on Peterson in 2018. All my sources links will be down below. Before I go on, just to remind you all, I am in no way a professional, a mental health care professional. I don't play one on radio. However, I have been a lifelong patient. So this is from the point of view I am coming from. Anyways, moving right along. Nestor talked about a paper he wrote. Basically, the reason many men have low sperm or low testosterone counts was because, and in his words, sociocultural transformations are probably making men less virile. Oh boy. Now, I think anybody can see how scientifically dumb that sounds. But anyways, Peterson apparently nodded in agreement. Well, there's a comforting thought from a supposed man of science. I mean, never mind that low sperm testosterone counts are fairly common in men over the age of 45, more so in the men and over the age of 50. Here I was thinking there was something biological explanation for that. Silly me for thinking critically. I mean, I always believed it was something illogical, like, oh, I don't know, genetics, poor diet, other lifestyle choices. Yawn. Oh, yeah, I forgot. We chicks are not supposed to think sciencey things like that. What are we going to do? But seriously, kids, the very fact that Peterson nods his head in agreement to this tripe makes one wonder if his PhD came out of a Cracker Jack box. Oh, it gets better. Here's an example of how old Geordie allows his political bias to get in the way instead of actually trying to help this young man. He comes to life when Nestor starts ranting about women who supposedly find marriage oppressive. And here is some utter brilliance from Peterson himself in his own words. So, I don't know who these people think marriages are oppressing, he says. I read Betty Friedan's book because I was very curious about it, and it's so whiny. It's just enough to drive a modern person mad to listen to these suburban housewives from the late 50s, ensconced in their comfortable, secure lives, complaining about the fact that they're bored because they don't have enough opportunity. It's like, Jesus Christ, get a hobby, for Christ's sake, you. I don't know. How would you finish that sentence, Dr. Peterson? I'd be curious to know. Inquiring minds might want to know. This is just an example of how Peterson, as the therapist and PhD, should know better. Now, since this is a Skype call that Peterson does not advertise as therapy, as a reminder, I suppose from a legal standpoint he can get away with this. However, if in private practice, there are regulations. Not sure about how this works in the province of Ontario, where he lives and works. But if anything similar were to happen here in Quebec, a therapist injecting one's political views like that would be a breach of ethics. And for those wondering about Betty Friedan's book, she wrote a book in 1963 called The Feminine Mystique, which basically led to the feminist movement of the 60s. As I said, he has more goodies for Nestor. In his words, you don't have a future and you don't have a job. No bloody wonder you're anxious, Peterson says. Yeah, he went there. How many has he told that they had no future, whether it's students or patients or his Skype patrons? And how many would actually drive themselves to desperate acts like harming themselves and or others? After all, acts like self-harm come from a place of despair, where there doesn't appear to be any hope for the person in question. To have it confirmed in a Skype session or providing counsel to a student by a licensed therapist psychologist could just be enough to send someone this vulnerable over that cliff. Just another form of exploitation. An unemployed and virtually homeless man shelling out $200 per month to have this Skype session with Peterson. Sounds exploitative, especially since Peterson was about yielding $80,000 per month just in Patreon donations. Apparently, since then, Peterson has stopped offering that service on his Patreon ever since. As a matter of fact, he doesn't appear to have a Patreon account anymore, or at least it's not advertised on his channel. But have no fear. In the description box to all his videos, there is a link where you can donate money to him. Yay! Funny how the man would counsel those suffering from depression or otherwise to go out and get jobs, but he himself is soliciting donations. And he bets many of those donations are from fans who were as broke as Trevor Alexander Nestor. And and it's funny, he tells people they should all go out and get jobs because their lives will be better ordered and they'll have better relationships. But he doesn't help young Trevor Alexander Nestor to find the tools to find a job. He just tells him his life is pretty much over, as in no future. So which is it, dude? Oh, and he sells merch as well as online personality tests. Now, I don't know how much the personality tests cost because I didn't get that far in his website. But there are tons of personality tests you can take online for free. I took one on camera on a live stream a while back just from 16personalities.com. If you want to see that, link is in the card above. I'm just saying. After Alec Manassian, a self-identified member of the Incel Revolution, that is a group that was co-opted by the original Incel, which means involuntarily celibate, for those who don't know, as a brief reminder. It has been co-opted by so-called men's rights groups, turning it into a forum for frustrated misogyny. Alec Manassian plowed through a busy Toronto intersection with his van in the spring of last year, killing 10 and injuring many more. Well, Peterson had this brain fart to offer. He was angry at God because women were rejecting him, Mr. Peterson says of the Toronto killer. The cure for that is enforced monogamy. It leads me to wonder if a distraught person were to seek therapy or counsel from him, and this person shares that they might want to kill or harm someone or a bunch of people for whatever reason, would he simply lament about how we as a society need forced monogamy and all will be well again? Just as he did with Nestor slamming Betty Friedan? Or would he try to talk him out of it as a responsible therapist should and would? Offer alternative solutions and, or if necessary, report him to the proper authorities. Again, what a responsible therapist or healthcare provider does. He would be required to do that by law, after all. Oh, and he tweeted to over 250,000 followers with all the accusations of sex assault emerging. Example, Louis C.K. We are going to soon remember why sex was traditionally enshrined in marriage. He later added, it's possible that sex is so dangerous that it has to be encapsulated within a socially sanctioned construct. Never mind that his comment is particularly stupid, but it is dangerous. I shouldn't have to point out that many who are the perpetrators of rape, sex harassment, or other forms of sexual misconduct are married, and many married to the same person for decades. But don't let facts get in the way of a good narrative. More alarming, before he opened his claptrap with his misogynistic views, particularly when it comes to sexual assault or even misconduct, what is scary is he did parrot those views if a patient came to him talking about being a victim of incest, rape, or sexual harassment. Fact of the matter is that many, if not most, who do suffer from mental health issues did suffer some form or another of abuse, and not just sexual. However, for the most part, it does tend to be sexual abuse. So, obviously, Peterson, with all his brain farts and his quotes, has shown he is ill-equipped as a therapist to deal with victim survivors of abuse or sexual abuse. Oh, don't worry, kids, there's more. Peterson said that men can't control crazy women because men aren't allowed to physically fight women. I know how to stand up to a man who's unfairly trespassed against me. Is this something out of the Lord's Prayer? Anyway, he said further, the parameters for my resistance are quite well defined, which is we talk, we argue, we push, then it becomes physical. If we move beyond the boundaries of civil discourse, we might know what that next step is. Okay, just by hearing that, I think Peterson himself could do well with some anger management classes. In fact, I think it would be more imperative for him to have anger management classes than his patients or students or whoever might seek counsel from him. Why don't you spill it, dude? What exactly is that next step? Dare you to say it on camera? Oh, well, he kind of did. He adds that men unwilling to throw a punch are contemptible. If you're talking to a man who won't fight with you under any circumstances whatsoever, then you're talking to someone for whom you have absolutely no respect. And that, my friends, is the most dangerous of all, especially from a licensed therapist or a university professor. I mean, imagine he's counseling or providing therapy to someone, man or a woman, with serious anger management issues who can fly off the handle way more easily. Bullying words. To have contempt for a man who cannot throw a punch under any circumstance. Yeah, bullying words. I thought we were supposed to be civilized. I mean, imagine he's counseling or providing therapy to someone, man or woman, with serious anger management issues who can fly off the handle more easily. If he says that to his patients, how many would go home and potentially either go beat their spouse or their kids or their dog? Or worse, go to a bar and get embroiled in some bar brawl. Get into a car and ram into a bunch of people, drunk or sober? Would he feel any guilt if somebody did that as a result of what he is preaching? Or what if he sees a patient who complains there is no longer any intimacy in their marriage? Would he advise this patient to simply have his way with his spouse, to force himself on her? Is this what he is suggesting? And yes, somebody who doesn't know any better, they think he's the psychologist and he's smarter than me. He says it's okay, it must be okay. See how this works? Now, most of us in a civilized society, whether or not we suffer from mental health issues, recovering from addiction, or just simply not know how wrong all that would be, and possibly even report him to the professional order, whatever governs psychologists in the province of Ontario. But what about somebody who is more vulnerable, who wouldn't dare even search for the professional order that governs Peterson's profession? Somebody who may validate his or her violent ideations? Or someone coming out of a session with him even more traumatized? Would he call a male patient or a student unrespectable or not worthy of respect if he doesn't beat the crap out of somebody for disagreeing with them? Peterson concludes that sane women should stand up against their crazy sisters. Okay, dude, I think by now we have an idea of what he means by stand up against their crazy sisters. Rachel Guys, the author of an article about Peterson's interview with Kemi Palya, asks a very good question of old Peterson. Is it the suggestion in Peterson's rueful tone that he's kind of bummed out by the fact that he can't hit women? Or is it the implication, if he were to follow his argument to its conclusion, that because women cannot be hit, they shouldn't be allowed to participate in civil discourse with men at all? Once again, article with that citation is in the description box below. Peterson's idea of therapy is not just dangerous for women, but it is dangerous for anyone, man, women, gay or straight, who may be vulnerable or who would have anger management issues. Those who may have expressed ideations of violence, whether it is to themselves or to society at large. That's going to do it for this video. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, or a thumbs down if you didn't. Please subscribe and hit that ringy-dingy icon below so you can receive a notification every time I upload. Please take care of yourselves and each other. Remember, if there is someone in your midst who is vulnerable or at risk, please take the time to check up on them. More often than not, a conversation, a sympathetic ear, or even sharing a coffee or a meal can make all the difference in the world to that person. Straight Talking Fedora Chick, over and out.